So now we talk about the moon in Synastry. It shouldn't be any big surprise that the moon's very important. Of course, it's our mind and consciousness, but in a deeper sense, really, it's the moon that gives us that feeling around another person. So we really connect with another person first through our moon, and that moon is what, gives us the feeling we have around them. And of course, the Kuta system revolves a lot around the moon, but it also revolves around all the other planets, but it's focused mainly on the moon because, again, moon is how we feel around that person, that innate feeling. So again, when we have the moon, let's say, in either person's first house, either connection to Venus, it's going to give a good, sweet feeling. One person's Venus on the other person's moon, and vice versa, is a very good connection. There can be a very natural love and empathy there because of that, and a certain trust and a certain desire to serve and its sweetness and all of that really flows both ways. And attraction and all that too, where one person's beauty, which is Venus, really affects the other one's heart, for instance. So that when moon interacts with Venus, it's also very nice. One person's moon in the other person's 7th house, also very nice. Very nice interaction there. It's like the person feels the other person's heart reflecting back to them, either one in this case. In that sense, even though the moon is feminine planet, there's no real hierarchy with that connection between 1st house, 7th house. It's going to bring it'll bring trust to whichever one has the moon, to whichever one has the 1st or 7th house. Like, let's say I'm the one who has, let's say I have a Gemini ascendant. Someone who has their moon in Gemini, I'm going to naturally trust them. I'll naturally trust them. I'll just naturally, because I can feel their heart. The moon is our heart. We all have a certain level of trust and sincerity in our heart. Now, one of the things, we'll be able to feel what's in that person's heart. If the person's heart is really mixed up, we'll feel that too. So again, we'll still feel it. And here's the thing to understand. One of the things we're trying to do in a relationship is just feel. This is deep stuff. So, especially, let's say someone has a Moon-Mars conjunction. Let's just keep up with the Gemini thing. Like I'm a Gemini, I have Gemini rising, and someone has Moon-Mars conjunction in Gemini. That's in my 1st house, and I can feel their heart, and I can also feel all of that kind of aggravation in their heart and that kind of intensity in their heart. But let's say I was raised by a mother, or I have a pattern of intensity and arguing and stuff like that. That's going to feel very familiar to me. And by the way, the reason I know this stuff is I've done huge research on this. And I do readings where I look into someone's chart and say, this is the type of person you're drawn to. And by the way, it's not simple. I've seen many videos where teachers are like, to see the nature of the partner, you look at the Upapada, or you look at this simple thing. There's nothing simple about it. You have to go into all of it. You look in their chart and you look at their habits and their patterns and their 7th Lord and Venus and their moon. It's a subtle, tricky process. Okay, so aside from that, but we're going to gravitate to what we're comfortable with, and it goes back to what I talked about in the first series of videos about our pattern. So even if that person, just because we're comfortable with them doesn't mean we're not tuned into how they're vibrating. Now, let's say that we grew up and we were, abused and punished severely by an older person, and we feel afraid of that, and someone has Moon Saturn in our 1st house. We'll feel that too, and we might be drawn, but we'll be kind of repelled, like, no, that reminds me of this thing. So, but the moon is an immediate sort of heart connection. So again, I already talked about sun moon, and you would like it to be the man, sun, woman's moon. The reverse is still a strong bond, though. You need to understand this as well. Very strong glue. Regardless of which direction the synastry takes, it's a strong glue that holds the people together. So a woman's sun on a man's moon is going to be almost just as strong of a glue as a man's sun on a woman's moon. But it's not one that's nearly as rewarding. In fact, it's upside down. So it's still strong glue. Synastry is the glue. Sun-moon is very strong glue. Moon-moon, very strong glue as well. It's usually compatible and good in the nakshatra scheme as well. And then Moon-Mars, like I say, one person's moon, another person's Mars, that can be really tricky. Because the Mars person is going to be a little bit impatient with the moon person's messy emotions, and emotions are messy. And the moon person is going to feel the other person's impatience and even hostility. So Moon-Mars can be tricky like that. It's not a good connection. It's one of the worst, frankly. And that's, just the way it is. I don't like to see Moon-Mars because somebody's going to be feeling hostile toward the other, and the other one's going to feel the aggression very easily. We all have an aggressive side. You'd like it to not go right to the other person's heart and hurt them very deeply, which is what happens with the moon. It's like there's no filter there. So we just feel the other person's intensity and we don't like it. Moon-Mercury, Mercury is very helpful and playful in all situations. It's, in general, it's a gentle, it's a gentle connection. The Mercury person can maybe help the moon person put their feelings into words, right? The Mercury person in that situation might feel their words turning into mushy emotions and can be confused. So you just want to see this is how the sharing sort of goes. So it kind of works that way. Moon Jupiter, one of the best as well, especially for helping to elevate the emotions out of just wallowing in the emotions. It can feel quite good to have one person's Jupiter, the other person's moon. Especially, again, you want to look at the genders. If it's the man's Jupiter on the woman's moon, absolutely, really nice. The reverse is also nice, but it's better when the woman doesn't feel like she's the teacher of the man. It doesn't work very well. When the woman feels like she's teaching the man, or she's trying to, she feels like she's the instructor, it doesn't work. First of all, he might not have asked for it. Again, these things aren't always conscious. It's like you don't always see that the woman is the man's teacher. Sometimes you'll actually see that, but the woman thinks she is, and she just like appoints herself as the teacher of the man or something, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work for the man or the woman. The reverse, though, is not so bad. Women like to feel like they're learning from the man. They like to see the man as an inspiring guide. Jupiter is a very powerful planet for a woman. The man's Jupiter is very powerful. Moon Venus, I already talked about. It's very good both directions. Moon Saturn, not necessarily as bad as you might think. Anything that has a long-term quality to it is going to have Saturn involved, and certainly things like marriage and other committed type of relationships, Saturn can be very important. Doesn't feel so good necessarily, but Saturn is very much like the sun in that regard, that the sun gives the quality of commitment, and so does Saturn. But Saturn's commitment feels often like obligation and control and based on fear. But it feels that way, but it can be remarkably comforting on some level, especially if the people have a strong Saturn in their individual chart. It might not be as bad as you think, but someone still might feel controlled, especially because the moon and the feeling of Saturn there isn't so good. It's better when it's the man and the woman, when it's the man's Saturn on the woman's moon, because again, Saturn is kind of like the sun in that way. Woman wants to know that the man will make a commitment, and Saturn is the commitment, but it might also feel controlling. The reverse, I don't like so much. Woman's Saturn on man's moon, kind of mommying, okay? Rahu moon can be confusing for either one. Definitely a little, not so great on some level with the confusion part of it, but you'll see it quite a bit. The nodes get involved, especially with things like moons, quite a lot. The Rahu person is expanding the moon person's emotional sort of vocabulary, and the moon person is kind of sensitizing the other person's Rahu. Again, it's confusing. Ketu moon, same sort of general idea, but the Ketu person is helping the moon person focus and concentrate on their emotions, internalizing them, like But again, they'll do it by being critical. K2 moon can be very critical of the moon person and their emotional messiness. And the moon person will be trying to sensitize the K2 person's criticism. Again, so it's confusing around these areas. So that's the moon in synastry.